Tom Fitton joins us now, president of Judicial Watch, author of A Republic Under Assault, to discuss. Hello, Tom. Great to have you with us, sir.
Hey, Vince. I thought that was a Trump administration official I heard talking.
Practically. What do you make
it's interesting how the Biden administration's coming around to the truth, however slowly.
Yes, very, very slowly. Take us through this. Why was there so much aggression directed at the lab leak theory back in 2020?
Well, they hated Trump, and they didn't want to play into his so-called politics with respect to China. And then secondly, if it was a lab leak, and it was less so much a lab leak they were concerned about, but the implication of a lab leak is that it was not a naturally occurring virus. It was engineered. And that only would have happened, practically speaking, with the help of taxpayers through this gain-of-function funding that Fauci and other agencies had authorized. So there was this self-protection that was behind the censorship of questions about the lab leak and gain of function.
Right, and the censorship you're talking about was extensive. I mean, the big social media companies were purging people off of their platforms for daring to mention that this thing likely came from a lab, and now that's becoming the consensus view at this late date.
Yeah, and it was at the request of WHO and Fauci and company. And what's really outrageous is that Fauci and company were very concerned initially about gain of function being involved, and they were debating it internally. Yet if anyone else on the outside subsequently was asking questions about it, they falsely suggested it was a conspiracy theory. And I want to know who knew what and when about the gain of function research, why it is they've been misleading the American people. And in my view, there's more than enough information and evidence out there for a criminal investigation into fraud and other misconduct as it relates to gain of function.
I mean, it does seem that Anthony Fauci's many, under oath testimonies before Congress should come under very close scrutiny now.
Yes, and on top of that, they were playing games with whether or not gain of function was being funded internally. So you've got the separate issue of perjury, but then you have EcoHealth saying they weren't doing gain of function when in fact they were, and who was involved in allowing that to take place despite all the evidence, much of which Judicial Watch has uncovered, including the grant application that describes gain of function. That's fraud. And in my view, if anyone else was engaged in that type of activity, they'd be subject to investigation. Just because it's Fauci and his colleagues and these deep state actors in the public health establishment, in addition to EcoHealth and others, they are seemingly still protected. This ought not to be a Department of Energy investigation. This ought to be a Justice Department investigation. Yes. Indeed, Judicial Watch uncovered the FBI was sniffing around this back in May of 2020, and I'd like to know what they found.
Yeah, we do know at least that the FBI does agree with the Department of Energy that this likely came from the lab in Wuhan. They've expressed with apparently moderate confidence that that's the case. Today, the White House was asked about whether or not they continue to support gain-of-function research, that is, making viruses more deadly to humans. Listen to John Kirby answer this question today.
Without weighing in one way or the other on origin of the virus, you've made clear that there's no consensus. Does the president believe, though, that the reward outweighs the risk when it comes to gain-of-function research?
Does the reward outweigh the risk when it comes to gain of
that type of research is proven? I got a history degree.
You're going to have to say that again?
Does the president believe that this type of gain-of-function research is proven?
He believes that it's important to help prevent future pandemics, which means he understands that there has to be legitimate scientific research into the sources or potential sources of pandemics so that we understand it, so that we can prevent them, and we can prevent them from happening, obviously. But he also believes, and this is why he wants the whole of government effort here to understand it, that research has to be done, it must be done, in a safe and secure manner and as transparent as possible to the rest of the world so people know what's going on. So I think that's a fancy way of saying yes.
A fancy way of saying yes. Joe Biden supports this dangerous research, Tom.
Yeah, that's a pretty extraordinary statement by Kirby, who is one of the top advisors for Biden on PR and speaking for the administration. And it frankly adds to the urgency of Congress taking steps to ban gain-of-function research. There's all these debates about what should be curtailed in the debt limit negotiations. I tell you, if this isn't a priority, I don't know what would be, because it's not just going on in China. We've uncovered it's going on here, and no one seems to give a rat's tail about it because Fauci and company have put out this propaganda that the only way to combat COVID is to engage in gain-of-function research while ignoring the likelihood that COVID arose from gain-of-function research.
There has never been one derived and expressed benefit of gain-of-function research. Not a single one. If there was, they would have been trotting it out a long time ago. There has never been any meaningful benefit from this very dangerous research, and it looks like we just experienced the tremendous downside, Tom Fitton.
Yeah, there's always, you can engage in all sorts of unethical scientific research, unethical in terms of the consequences being so out of proportion to any benefit. There's always something to be gained from unethical scientific research. Gain of function should be banned and prohibited. And it's a creation of the bureaucrats in NIH, NIAID, USAID, and Congress hasn't endorsed this. Do you think that Congress would allow this if it was put up to a vote, or any state legislature? This is a creature of the public health establishment and Fauci and company. And if Congress doesn't put a lid on this, we could lose more than a nation.
I mean, there was look, Barack Obama's administration had a moratorium slapped on this. That's how dangerous it was. They thought it was too dangerous to do. And then Anthony Fauci started carving out loopholes for who was allowed to do this type of dangerous research. It clearly was considered both controversial and dangerous. And yet here we are on February 27th of this year. You just had John Kirby say today that Joe Biden endorses gain-of-function research as a proper behavior by the United States federal government.
No, and if that ought to be a clarion call for, frankly, honest Republicans and honest Democrats to say no. I mean, who's in favor of this, other than Fauci? Who's in favor of this, other than people who benefit directly from the funding? I don't think any citizen looking at this would want taxpayer funding to go towards this, let alone allow even the private sector to do it. It's like, turning biological weapons research over to Moderna. Well, wait, maybe we've already done that, but that's another debate.
Mm-hmm. I want to mention, I started the show, Tom Fitton, by playing so much of the audio of the American left all over television, accusing Donald Trump and Tom Cotton and others of engaging in a conspiracy theory by invoking the Wuhan lab. They called it, here's a sample. CNN's Drew Griffin referring to the Wuhan lab leak as a widely debunked conspiracy theory.
And then there's this theory, widely debunked. This paper from 2 Chinese researchers that says it is plausible that the virus leaked accidentally from one of 2 labs near the Wuhan seafood market.
Widely debunked. Do you think there will be any apologies forthcoming, Tom Fitton? Anybody who's going to do a mea culpa as of today?
No, I can't keep track of the things that have been debunked that turn out to be true or have strong evidence behind. And those responsible for this can't be trusted to report on current debates or controversies as well. So that's the only, at least, accountability that we're likely to get, which is a further loss of credibility of the big media. And of course, I'd like to know who was behind the censorship of concerns about this. And this is why the so-called Fauci files and other disclosures about the censorship of American citizens and others who were raising questions about this, people who were being deplatformed, having their content curtailed, or, to the tune of tens of millions of Americans who couldn't read information about this because of the censorship. So it's not just those whose material was censored. You have a right to see this material. And if people are telling, kind of preventing you from seeing that, you're a victim too, dear listener.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, I encourage people to share the Wall Street Journal coverage of this far and wide if they can. Just share it on your social media. Make sure your left-wing friends see it. Make sure that they know, even if they won't silently admit it, if they won't admit it to you, they'll silently realize how much they screwed up. Just put it in front of them. It's just a good reminder.
And we have to remember, the lab leak theory doesn't only call China's conduct into question. It calls U.S. government conduct into question.
Yes.
Because if it was a lab leak, it was likely messed with the virus. And if it was messed with, it was with taxpayer support. And everyone knew what the dangers were. And Fauci and company knew Wuhan and EcoHealth were involved in inappropriate gain-of-function research going back to 2016, at least, because we've got the smoking gun documents.
I know, and they were doing it during the Trump era, too, which is why I always had this secret wish that not so secret, I said it several times, but that the left would have taken aim at the lab leak component and then tried to blame Trump for it. It happened on Trump's watch. Okay, yeah, sure, whatever. Tell us how it happened. I was praying that they would take that anti-Trump animus and direct it towards something good. But no, they never gave us anything. And they just lied dutifully on behalf of these ridiculous people who lied to us throughout. Thank you very much. Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. Always good to talk to you, sir.
Thank you, Vince.
All right.